compared to Minnesota, we are very far behind because Minnesota does have better services with direct access. Another issue we'd like you to mention to your legislators is employment, or I should say the lack of employment. The last is communication. Interpreters hold a license, and if there is a grievance because an interpreter is not following their code of ethics, they need to make a complaint to DSPS, but they have no clue about deaf culture, they have no clue about American Sign Language, and they are not really up to speed as to how interpreters provide services. So when you meet your legislator, please, introduce yourself, tell them what your name is, where you are from, what kind of background, and then we will be able to share our issues. Please, there are 5 talking points, so if you are with a group, please address one topic with each of the 4 groups of legislators so that we don't use up their precious time. Each person in the group take one talking point. And now we have some videos, just little vignettes that we would like you to see.
Hi, my name is Cookie Rowing, and I have 2 deaf daughters, ages 4 and 6, that attend a Montessori school. My eldest daughter does not qualify for an IEP, but my youngest daughter does. And we made the request for an ASL interpreter for her in her classroom. Her teacher does sign somewhat, but we really wanted more access to her first language in the classroom, which is ASL. The first request was for 20 minutes daily during group time. Fortunately, the IEP turned it down because it was too short and an unwise use of resources, we were told, which we grudgingly had to accept. So I agreed to come in and teach some ASL on Fridays. After that, there was a story time for the kids to participate in, but I noticed my daughter never paid attention. And the reason was because she didn't have access to hear the story, because she can't hear. And that was really disheartening. I brought this to the IEP team meeting and asked once again for an ASL interpreter to be provided. Thankfully, the principal and the teacher were on board this time to provide one all day, but that wouldn't be in place until the next school year.
Hi, we're the Porters.
Where are we from, honey?
We are from northern Wisconsin. We represent the Wausau area.
We have a great community of deaf and hard of hearing and deaf-blind individuals in our area. We're really glad to live here. But one downside to this area, you tell them.
Lack of interpreters.
He's right. There are only a few or a handful of qualified interpreters in our area. Anytime we need an appointment or, God forbid, an emergency, finding one is really hard. Oftentimes, the interpreter that comes is not qualified, doesn't meet our needs, and the communication breaks down with the doctor we need to say. So, you know what they usually have us do? VRI, video remote interpreting, which relies on a high-speed internet connection, and if that's not working, then the screen freezes. And if you can imagine you're being seen for a surgery or something, that is not the right accommodation. Oftentimes the interpreter's from a different area, they don't sign like we do, or they don't talk like we do. We need interpreters who can understand us.
Yeah, technology is not the end-all be-all. One time, for example, I was at a doctor's appointment, and we were just getting towards the end of it, and what do you know? My video remote interpreter froze on the screen. My communication completely shut down. The doctor was so fed up with the technology that he just turned it off. Didn't even ask my opinion, and it was terrible.
Yeah, where's our equal access to be able to have appointments when we need them like you guys can? You guys can make appointments whenever you need them and get in and be seen the same day. We can't do that. We want to be able to do that, but oftentimes it relies on the interpreter's availability and we have to accommodate the interpreter. How ridiculous is that? The other downside to living here is that a lot of the hospital systems and businesses have a contract with a specific interpreter in our area. Even though we have said that we would prefer somebody else because this person's skill is just not that great, we're told, no, so sorry, we have someone we have a contract with, you'll just have to work with this person. And we're told that, well, this is better than nothing. And we think to ourselves, that is not fair. Where is our ability to access our information?
Interpreters really need to be professional and fit the needs that we have as patients and as consumers, not us having to alter our lives to fit their needs.
If you can imagine, it's like our lives are controlled by others. That's not fair.
And that's really why I wanted to make this video as a shout out to all of you to help us in the community.
We really need something to change. It's critical. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys. Hi, my name is Heather Stockwell, and I'm from Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I wanted to share with all of you that because I live in a rural part of the state, I am unable to use my phone. Because I use a video phone for telecommunications, I rely on high-speed internet connection, and that's not something that I have a problem with solely, but my neighbors do as well, the surrounding areas. We can't even call 911 if they have an emergency because our phones are unreliable. It's a common problem for us in the rural part of the state. We need your help.
So imagine it's a typical night. You've just put your kids to bed, you're about to get in bed yourself, and you have peace of mind knowing you can put your trust in your equipment, your fire alarms, and your carbon monoxide detector. We don't have that same peace of mind. Let me tell you a story. This happened to a friend of mine 3 years ago. She and her mom had gone to bed thinking everything was fine. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, her house exploded. Both of them were deaf and they could not hear the CO2 detector going off to alert them to leave the premises. And they both died. They couldn't afford the proper equipment because of its expense. That's true for all of us every day. We are always worried that something like that will happen to us because we can't afford to have the right equipment. We don't feel safe in our own homes. We can't hear our own fire alarms and our own carbon monoxide detectors. We have a right to feel safe in our house, just like you do. Thanks for listening.
I just wanted to share my experience that I've had here in Wisconsin getting some mental health services. I honestly haven't really had a good time as a deaf person. My experience has kind of have been just with with a therapist who has signed, but unfortunately she moved to Georgia. I've also had a therapy sessions that have been with interpreters provided, and I don't really feel like I've been able to get a good rapport for those therapy sessions. One time I did, um, well, actually for a couple years I had a therapist that signed herself, but she wasn't very good at signing, so I ended up having to teach sign language to her during my therapy sessions and wasn't able to get much therapy from her. Um, I've also had, well, normally my therapy sessions are with interpreters. My most recent has been actually through telehealth, which is therapy provided from out of state, which has been pretty cool. It's worked out. Um, I'd actually like to see more of telehealth services allowed for the residents of Wisconsin. I just, I don't know, maybe that or having more therapists who know sign language themselves. I don't know if we can require that. Um, I don't think that would be ideal, but I think that there just needs to be something more, something better in terms of services for deaf people that have mental health issues. You know, for myself, I have depression. I'm also homebound, and I would prefer telehealth for that reason. If I have to go out for therapy, I could make do, I can make it work. I wish there was a place closer to my home. I do have one. There's one office that's located in West Dallas, which is a little far for me, but it's not terribly far. I don't know. I could make it work. It's just something else that I have to cope with. I just wanted to share my experience with you. I really appreciate you guys listening.
Hi, my name is Dory Richards, and I'm a resident of Madison, Wisconsin. I have seen every corner of the mental health system, and then finally, at age 38, I got the help I needed. Within 2 years of getting the right help, I was able to begin my recovery process. My personal experience is what motivated me to get certified as a peer support specialist. I took the training and I got certified in the state of Wisconsin. Unfortunately, I had nothing but frustration trying to find a job with this new certification in the state. So currently, I'm working as a certified peer support specialist for the state of Minnesota. And I'm providing support services through the video phone. It's been a great experience. I've been working with them and for them for a year, but my heart is here in Wisconsin and I am deeply concerned. There are a lot of deaf residents in the state who are frustrated, wanting to work with another deaf person to help them through their mental health struggles. And there aren't direct service providers. And I bring the experience personally to the table and can help a lot of people. I cannot say enough how critical it is for Wisconsin residents who are deaf and hard of hearing to get direct services for their mental health issues, and also to get help from a peer support specialist if they need one, someone such as myself. Thank you for listening. For the deaf and hard of hearing and deafblind. Imagine yourself at night as a deaf person, and there is a disaster on the way or some severe weather alert. You can't hear the siren that's going off in your neighborhood. How are you going to wake up and know what to do? Some deaf individuals rely on technology, but that doesn't account for a power outage. Thankfully, nothing has happened to me, but it could, and I wouldn't know it was on its way. We need to do more here in Wisconsin. You all have the benefit of receiving a 911 emergency text message probably on your cell phone in the middle of the night, and you wake up from that and know to go into the basement. I don't. Another concern of ours is when FEMA, or the Wisconsin Emergency Management, makes an announcement on live news. There's no captioning, or the captioning is terrible. So we are here to ask for a live sign language interpreter anytime there's a severe weather alert or a disaster impending, so that there's a much more clear communication and we know what to do next. A third concern is text to 911. Thankfully, Rock County here in the state has established this service for deaf individuals, but the other 71 counties have not. There are 3 other counties who have this in process, but deaf individuals need to be able to text to 911 when there's an emergency. This is a problem. We are hoping to see this addressed because deaf individuals need to be able to get a hold of 911 services in the case of an emergency. Thanks for listening.
Hi, Wisconsin, part-time for 4 years, and
I've been working here in
I was
Wisconsin
looking for a
part-time
full-time
job
for 4 years
for the
and
purpose of having
all
benefits.
the while I was looking for a full-time
Fortunately,
job.
many of the jobs that I
for
had
the purpose of
been
having
applying
benefits
for
required
Fortunately,
verbal
many of
and
the
oral
jobs that I had
skills. Been applying for required verbal and oral skills, which really hindered my opportunities here within the state. As a result,
opportunities
I was
here within
only
the
able to
state.
find a full-time job
As
in
a
New
result,
Mexico. I was only able to find a full-time
Which
job
I have
in New
accepted
Mexico.
and have had to relocate.
Which I have accepted and have had to
Unfortunately, though,
relocate. All my family is still in Wisconsin and Michigan.
Unfortunately, though, all my family is still
I
in
wanted my
Wisconsin and
part-time
Michigan.
job in Wisconsin to be full-time.
I wanted my
but because
part-time
of
job
state
in
budget
I
in
was
Wisconsin
only able to
be
maintain
full-time.
a part-time status,
But because
which
of
is
state
again
budget,
why I had
I
to
was only
relocate
able
to
to
New Mexico
maintain
to
a
have a
part-time
full-time
status,
job
which
with
is again
benefits.
why I had to relocate to New Mexico to have a full-time job with benefits.
So imagine it's a typical night. You've just put your kids to bed. You're about to get in bed yourself. And you have peace of mind knowing that you can trust your fire alarm and your carbon monoxide detector because you can hear it if they go off. Let me tell you a story of something that happened to my best friend and her mother 3 years ago. They had both gone to bed. They thought everything was fine. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, their house exploded. The two of them couldn't hear the fire alarm or the CO2 detector telling them that something was wrong because they were deaf. Visual alarm systems like this for deaf individuals are 3 to 4 times the expense that you incur when you buy your own. We face this sort of thing every day. The anxiety that something like this might happen to us because we don't have the technology we need to feel safe in our own homes. We can't hear the fire alarm going off or the CO2 detector going off. We have a right to have one and to feel safe in our homes just as you do. Thanks for listening.
Okay, so as you've watched these videos, they really did address the 5 talking points. Mental health, perhaps that's something that you have in common with the vignette. Share that with your legislator. Why don't we have those kinds of situations under control and set up for access for deaf individuals? Minnesota has them. So many of you have had to use video relay interpreting, and oftentimes health providers are not proficient in setting up the interpreting service. You could be laying there in the emergency room in pain. So address that with your legislator. The number of interpreters is pretty scarce in the northern areas of Wisconsin. We need to be able to grow that pool. Southeastern Wisconsin has plenty of interpreters. Another talking point is the alarms for emergencies. Many deaf individuals can't afford to purchase a visual alert system. And of course, we have the problem of not having good internet service in rural areas in Wisconsin, and that is something we would like to see improved. Talking about text to 911 is a new system, and if there is an emergency, of course they show it on TV, but oftentimes there's no captioning. So deaf individuals are not in the loop as to what is happening. So please talk about your experiences, your frustrations. This is your chance to let your legislators know. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Katie Voss, who is going to talk about American Sign Language and deaf culture.
Can everyone see me? Good morning. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Katie Voss. Many of you know me. I come from a deaf family, and in my own lifetime I've seen many things. I remember specifically when I was a little girl, my parents really encouraged us to get involved in the political system with our own legislators and representatives. So I'm really glad to be here and to see such a great turnout. I'm hoping that you feel comfortable to talk to your representatives, that you are a human being. You are no different from them. And if you're going to talk about deaf culture, I would encourage you to mention to your legislator or any other person, don't be afraid to say hello to me. I'm a person just like you are. If you have questions about what I need in terms of accommodations such as an interpreter or captions or writing notes back and forth, encourage hearing people to ask us so that you can tell them what best suits you. This is your life. It's our life. We want to protect and preserve American Sign Language, certainly, but we know that many of us were frustrated as youngsters, being forced to talk and read lips, and we need our legislators to hear that from us. Many of us ended up learning sign language much later in life, going to college at Gallaudet, and reflecting on that experience, just knowing how much frustration was there when you were young that possibly could have been avoided. In one of the videos, we encouraged you to introduce yourself and say, "Hi, legislator so-and-so, it's really nice to meet you. Please don't be afraid of me. I'm a person just as you are." We want you to be able to feel comfortable teaching and talking about these things to your legislators. So there's a video that goes with this. I'd like to have us watch that now.
Dear hearing people, we have some things to tell you about us. Sometimes we use a different language to hear you. Sometimes we can see.
Sometimes we don't. Some of us like to wear hearing aids or cochlear implants to hear. Some of us need interpreters to communicate with others. Please don't force us to wear hearing aids or lip read for your benefit.
That is our personal and private choice.
Don't make decisions for us without our participation or permission. You'd be shocked. We are doctors, lawyers, filmmakers,
Race car drivers, teachers,
Inventors, CEOs,
chefs, video gamers, musicians, singers, why we're perfectly happy being who we are.
Most of the time, our struggles in society occur when other people make it difficult for us. Sometimes we are too tired to explain ourselves. We suggest
that you simply ask us questions and be open.
Don't be scared. Don't run away. Running away only means that you'll continue to not understand us.
that lack of understanding will only hurt us more.
We're a human being with thoughts and feelings, just like anyone else.
And we are going to break for lunch now. There will be
Indian sisters Sonia and Anita have never seen their own mother's face.
okay. We are going to break for lunch. It will be served in the hall. Well, before we break for lunch, we have one other matter that we'd like to address.
There was actually one other video that was called Lead K. We wanted to show stands for Language Education Acquisition for the Deaf, LEAD-K. It's a new bill that has made its way in other states. We're hoping to see something similar happen in Wisconsin. We will have to edit it, but we do want to see something similar here. We thought we will show it to you during lunch, so eat, and then come back to see this video.
Okay, lunch is from Potbellies, not belly pots, Potbellies, and we will be serving that in the hall, and there also will be water to drink.
And soda.
And we would like to have first the deaf-blind, people who are in wheelchairs, and then the senior citizens before the young people proceed to get into line for lunch. Pick up your food and bring it back here and eat it in this room, and we will take a look at that video about language acquisition. we are going to start the line to the right.
Looks like there are not tables set up yet. We're setting them up now.
Well, thank you all very, very much for coming down. I'm State Representative Jonathan Brostoff, and this is my good friend, mentor, and awesome legislator, Chris Larson, who is the state senator for
How's it
this
going?
area.
Also, yeah, I'm also happy to be a state senator.
Yep.
For anybody around UW-Milwaukee, all the way south to Oak Creek, and all the little communities in between there.
And we're going to teach Senator Larson the sign for UW. We're going to teach him Panther today, so that he knows how to represent his school. So Panther's just like just right there, right? Panther, like a little claw coming out, right? So very good.
It's like kid.
Yeah. So yeah, I really appreciate everyone coming here, and we're gonna stop talking and listen to you guys. But this is the first of hopefully many more legislative days that we can bring people to Madison for. And this all came because my good friend Eve and I were sitting in a coffee shop kind of talking about all the different issues facing the community and other work we were doing together on licensure issues and mental health issues and a myriad of other issues facing the deaf and hard of hearing community. And we said, well, we really just got to make sure it's not just one politician here in the story. We got to bring, the community up here, and for both, the community to kind of learn who their representatives are and to make sure that they have a better relationship with the deaf, with the politicians, and also the politicians can understand directly from the deaf and hard of hearing community. So I'm very happy to see this all come together. We had relatively short notice to do it. It was great. Thanks so much to Wad and to Pam and to everyone and to Eve. And to our interpreters and everyone else. So thank you all so much. So with that, let's hear from you guys. And I think we'll just take our seats.
These are for you, the legislators. Do you have enough?
Well, I'm not shy. I have a list of about 10 things, but I'm not going to discuss them all. I'm really concerned about access for mental health for deaf and hard of hearing clients because, number one, we have difficulty for deaf and hard of hearing service providers to get licensed in the state. So that's one, even though there are people trained at California University, they try to move into Wisconsin, you can't get licensed. And although I've trained interpreters for a long time, there are wonderful interpreters out there. I'm a mental health therapist myself, retired, and it's really important to have direct service in many, many situations. And we can't give that in Wisconsin. We can't get people certified or licensed. It's a difficult process because they have to earn something like 3,000 clinical hours, and they have to have it under supervision. So if you have a deaf person who has to earn those clinical hours under supervision, you also have to have an interpreter. Who's going to pay for the interpreter? So it's a big issue. We have interacted with DSPS, the Department of Support and
Safety and
and they're the licensing agency, as I'm sure you know, and we haven't been able to make much headway with that. So that's number one. Number two.
And sorry, just a quick question for you too. So, can you please go into a little more detail on the difference between direct service and not direct service?
Well, right. If the person is in need of, is depressed, let's say, which could be common for lots of people, and wants to see a mental health therapist, that person would have to make an appointment and then say, ask for an interpreter. Somebody has to pay for the interpreter. Most deaf people are underemployed. They really can't afford that, and why should they be double penalized for having to bring a communication facilitator in? So then we start talking about ADA. Well, if it's one service provider in a single office, that person probably will not be able to provide an interpreter. It's only when you have a certain number. things that, issues that are very, very confidential often, and often very sensitive. So it's so much better to establish the rapport between a service provider and a consumer, and get the direct service rather than having to go through another person. And oftentimes in situations like that, even when you have the best interpreter, some of the issues like anger might even be thrown onto the interpreter because that interpreter is the one who's saying or signing the words from the therapist. So that the direct service is so much better. It's like having a direct communication rather than saying, tell her this, tell her I feel like that, tell him I feel like that. It just doesn't have the same impact. And often it's embarrassing. And the deaf community is small, so they know the interpreters and they know each other. And there's a matter of trust because they don't trust that the interpreter is going to get their message across, or even with confidentiality, which is supposed to happen. They may see them out in the community and know that that person was my interpreter, and maybe it's going to come out that, I have depression, and therefore I'm working with someone. So there's a lot of complex kinds of issues. So interpreters are excellent. We have probably in this state we have the largest number of what we call Q interpreters certified to do mental health work. They're wonderful. But if we can get direct service, that's number one. Then go to resort to using it as number two. So we need some direct service providers. It's just really important. So that's one issue.
Yeah, one of them.
But that's good. So that's, and then just to access into the mental health system itself, where, how do they get into it? Because it's very complicated. Even with that, you might need an interpreter to get them in. Somebody doesn't really understand all the issues. And sometimes, even at the moment of diagnosis, people are diagnosed as being schizophrenic or have some really serious mental issue, and yet it may be nothing more than isolation, lack of communication, so that's why another reason why direct service provider is better, because that person usually knows the resources in the community rather than an interpreter or somebody who's relying on an interpreter having to call and find out, what do you do if you have a deaf person and he's from another, she or he is from another culture, and how do you put them in touch with someone who can support them? And then we do have one certified peer support person. You heard her talk today if you were there. She's deaf, she's highly qualified, she can't get a job because without an interpreter present, she isn't going to be able to work for an agency that probably is not going to give her a full caseload of other deaf individuals. But she's there to support a deaf person who has mental or emotional problems. She's certified to be a peer support person, and yet it's very difficult. She hasn't been able to get a job in that area. She's working in another area. So that's sad because she's going to stay there. She has a family here, but if she were somebody else, she might leave the state like a lot of the other people who have been qualified and certified do. And then, I think it's really important. I don't know how much legislation it might take, but like the Deaf Child's Bill of Rights, which would give them, and many other states have adopted it and have said this child has a right to communication, and that communication could involve American Sign Language. It could also involve other means of communication. And if we have a Deaf Bill of Rights, which many states have taken up, then we can make sure that it's written into the IEP that this child needs a certain kind of communication from day one, rather than having to fight the system of people saying, well, this child can understand me, why does he need that kind of communication? So that's another issue, and, well, I'll let somebody else talk.
Sorry, before next.
Just as far as any speaking comments, it doesn't look like they're coming through on the microphone on the camera. So I was just discussing with her, because she'll be using the microphone the most, that maybe when other people are speaking, that they should come over here and use it if that's okay.
Yep.
So we just wanted to say that. Thank you.
And
I was just wondering if also you could email our offices some examples of the states that have passed those Bill of Rights.
I'm sorry, what?
If you could email our offices some examples of the different states that have passed the Bill of Rights, just so we can do a little research, that'd be very helpful, and we can start working. Thank you. And thank you.
And you brought that up with the mental health board, right, at the public hearing?
Yes, well, I wasn't, I guess I wasn't there, but sorry, Jonathan. I wasn't there, but I sent my remarks
Okay, 'cause somebody
in.
did read those.
Or maybe somebody read them out loud, I don't know, I was out of town.
Okay. 'Cause that's a good place to address it too. We'll have
Hi there, my name is Lisa. I actually did attend the forum, the mental health forum. I just had 3 items I wanted to mention. I did actually formerly live in New York, and I saw a counselor there. I had to meet with a therapist who didn't know sign language, so they had to have an interpreter, and it's very awkward to go through a third party. I didn't have a choice, though, because where I lived, that was the closest person that could provide the service. There certainly wasn't anyone who was also deaf. Later, I moved to a larger deaf community in Rochester, New York. And that was my first experience having a deaf counselor. Oh my, I was so comfortable. I didn't have any of those awkwardness that I had with the other one, and I got a tremendous amount of help in a very short amount of time. I do still take medication, and I've had to since transfer my therapy here. And therapists, they just don't know what is unique to deaf people. They don't get the deaf culture, they don't get the language, and that oftentimes is a huge barrier, and it takes a lot of time just to get over that one hump before you can even begin the therapy part. Hello, my name is John Reski, and I live in Shorewood, Wisconsin. I'm deafblind. I have low vision, and I have 2 cochlear implants. I am married to a woman who can hear, who knows sign language. I, as a very small baby, was born premature. There were 3 items I wanted to bring to your attention. Specifically about SSPs, which is a support specialist provider, and that's specific to the deaf-blind population. They typically act as a guide and an interpreter. Some states, for example, North Carolina has a formalized program for SSPs to learn how to become guides. Sometimes you have to get an interpreter separate. Usually an SSP tells the deaf-blind person what's going on in the environment. So if you can imagine yourself in a hospital and you cannot see the room that you're in or the people coming and going, an interpreter would interpret content, but an SSP will tell you what's in the room, the equipment that's present, how large the room is. An interpreter will tell me what a doctor is saying, and then the SSP helps me know where the doctor is standing. Is he near the door? Where do I look? You know, things like that. It's a totally different role and function, different from an interpreter. SSPs also help transport individuals such as myself, go to the store, be independent, you know, just drive me around so I can do my own business. Some states do pay for services like that on a limited basis, maybe up to $5,000 possibly. Some states, I know in Minnesota, have something more formalized. I don't know what they call their program, but North Carolina is very well versed in providing services for deafblind and allocating funds to provide transportation services and SSPs to individuals like myself. Again, I don't know exact numbers per se, but this is near and dear to me. I wish there were an SSP program or provision in the state of Wisconsin for additional support for interpreters who are interested in taking this on additionally as another job. This wouldn't be specific to all interpreters, but interpreters who are interested in getting this specialized training as an SSP, perhaps there could be some sort of funding support. Because right now, oftentimes I have an interpreter and I have somebody else who helps me with the other things, but SSPs can do both. Again, going back to what Eve was saying about direct service, having one person is great. An interpreter and an SSP have very specific qualifications. They need proficiency in sign language, plus just knowing the specific needs of a deafblind person. A lot of people don't know even how to approach me or how to guide me correctly, and it's very frustrating if they don't have the right training. So I wish I could hire an SSP who's been formally trained. That would just help me remain independent. There would be fewer outbursts because it's so frustrating. The second thing I wanted to mention has to do with video remote interpreting, VRI, or video relay interpreting. I've been to hospitals before, and they bring in this clunky computer thing, and I just know what's about to come next. They were too lazy to get me a real-life interpreter, so they're handing me this computer device. The first time I used one, I didn't know what to do. So I thought I would try it. I was trying to be open-minded. The doctor came in, he touched the screen, and then this tiny person came on the screen. Well, for someone such as myself, I would need the screen enlarged, and I didn't have the ability to do so. So the interpreter also happened to be from out of state. So this interpreter doesn't have a license to practice in Wisconsin, and I'm not comfortable with that. I mentioned that to the hospital. I do not want to see this computer doohickey in the room ever again. Don't bother bringing me a VRI. I don't want it. It doesn't work for me. Throw it out for all I care. Because this person's out of state. They don't have a license to practice in the state of Wisconsin. I know the law. The law says you have to have a license. Get rid of your VRI. And I've heard other stories from my friends who have had this similar situation. They go to their appointment thinking they're going to see a live interpreter, and there's a computer there instead. Deaf-blind people, if I had an SSP, like I just mentioned, perhaps it would be a lesser issue. But this is so important, I can't stress it enough, this VRI thing. Thirdly, employment. I, thankfully, am employed. I work at a funeral home, but I'm the first deafblind person in America, actually, to have full-time employment at a funeral home for 2 years. Yes, it's hard to communicate with my colleagues. My boss always complains about paying for interpreters. 2 weeks ago, in fact, we were having a meeting for an hour and a half, and I asked to have an interpreter so I could catch up on my duties, ask my questions that I'd been storing up for some time. And I have tried to meet with them without an interpreter before, but he tries to write notes to me, and I don't understand him, and he doesn't understand me. It's a waste of his time and mine. I mean, I try to tell him I'm a deafblind person who uses sign language. Sign language is my first language, not English. ASL is a separate language altogether. Grammar structure is different from English. A lot of people don't understand that. So he thinks writing notes will do it, but it doesn't. So there are a lot of errors that I make in my work that don't need to happen. Having an interpreter would just solve the problem, but they say no. And actually, they've warned me. They have said, if you talk about us not providing an interpreter, if you blab about that to DVR, you can expect to find another job. And so now I find myself treading on eggshells. I don't want to speak up. I enjoy earning a paycheck and being independent, but they should have a grievance filed against them. I am hoping, or I'm considering some action, but this isn't right. They shouldn't refuse me. I'm just asking to participate. I think my dream, I really think it's a good idea, especially in Wisconsin, should make it illegal. If you refuse, they should get a fine. $5,000, take that. That's my right. I'm only asking for communication. I don't know why it's such an issue. I know the Federal Trade Commission, for example, has rules for funeral homes. If you don't follow these rules as they are laid out by law, if you neglect them, if a family member does such and such, a family member has a right to receive proper funeral services for their deceased family member. You cannot get in the way if they don't listen to the wishes of the family. There are general policies that have to be abided by for funeral services, and if the funeral home neglects these issues or doesn't listen to the family members, they are fined $5,000. And I thought, hey, why don't we have something similar? If there are still companies in this day and age refusing to provide something as simple as communication access, fine them for $5,000 and give me the equal access and fair access that I deserve as a fellow human being. So I am hoping that you take this to heart. We really, most of us, we want a good life for ourselves. We want to participate in the world we live in. Deaf individuals have a hard time. Deaf-blind individuals have a harder time. We want to be out there participating in our communities. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, and I just want to also take a quick second before we continue. Well, first of all, thank you very much for your testimony, but I want to recognize Representative Shanklin, who has a very busy day, but she took some time out to hear these, and I'm going to be meeting with her later to go over the issues we've discussed. We also have it documented so we can go into more depth on the specific policy issues we're discussing today. So just really appreciate Representative Shanklin here, and also Ann from Representative Sinicki's office, who I forgot to recognize earlier, but appreciate you guys being here. So just wanted to say that. So thank you very much, and thanks for coming by. And I had one quick technical question. As far as the unique interpreting services, the SSR, is that right? SSP, excuse me. It's been a very long day, so I'm a little off. But SSP, is there also the Q certification, or is that not needed, or how does that work in Wisconsin? Do you know, or maybe Eve, do you know?
The Q certification is only for people who have had training in mental health interpreting. So the SSP is something completely different. That's an interpreter and someone who helps a deaf-blind individual, navigate the day. And so Q certification would not be one of those requirements, but being an interpreter in Wisconsin does require that you have certain qualifications, but not necessarily Q. I also just want to make a comment that even though John Reske may not even open his mouth to speak like we do, he has a lot of things going on in his head. He's certainly very, very aware of what's going on in the world, and that's exactly the reason why we need access in language, in education, on all fronts, so that deaf children can really grow up and succeed to their potential. We can't keep them back because we have them here to contribute to our community as a citizen.
Absolutely. And, furthermore, although, Representative Bowen isn't here, who has the Shorewood area, I work very closely with him. And if there are any issues with, with that whistleblowing or with DVR or with your employer that we can be of help with, please don't hesitate to let our offices know or let my office know, and we'll make sure we follow up. But, it sounds like a very unfair situation, so I'm sorry you're dealing with that right now. And, I'll just say one other quick little thing for everyone here, which is there is such a misunderstanding, not just of, cultural issues in ASL versus English, but just simple, for example, Representative Bowen and I host a radio show together every Tuesday. And thanks to our friends at UWM and, Pam and everyone else, we've been able to get it translate into sign language, into ASL. So it's great, and I was so happy. I showed it to David, to Representative Bowen, right away. I was like, oh, check this out. I showed him on my phone because, I was on my phone, and he was watching the video, and he kept messing with it, and it wasn't, connecting for him. And I'm like, what's up? He's like, oh, this is cool, but I can't hear anything. You know what I mean? And, that's the point, is it's not necessarily malicious or anything like that. It's just, that's the point. I can't hear anything. So I think part of the beauty of you guys coming up here today, and I hope, for many years to come, year after year, is that, situations that are unfamiliar to a lot of legislators here who might not know as much about deaf culture, language, or some of the unique issues facing our community is going to be addressed by, interactions like this. So again, I just want to say thank you very much, and I hope you do follow up with us, and I can also make sure to get you in touch with Representative Bowen, let us know if there is anything we can do to be a help with your situation in particular, please.
Hi there. Hi, my name is Meg Kenyon. I'm a school social worker for Milwaukee's MPS system. As you've mentioned, I have a myriad of concerns I could bring to your attention today. I would like to focus on mental health. I agree, it is a primary concern that we're seeing more and more, especially in the Milwaukee area. And I'm not speaking here for MPS. I'm not representing MPS right now. I'm talking from my experience in working with my students in my caseload. Many of the kids that come to my school need counseling. They need mental health services. MPS cannot provide counseling. We are not licensed, obviously. We are there to teach and instruct these students as they come to us. I try to make referrals, but again, who am I going to refer them to? Many providers don't sign. They have no idea how to work with a deaf student or to know their development and how it's unique to them. Like Eve had said, a lot of people who get direct service or can be a direct service provider graduate from Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C. They teach deaf culture there. It's part of their curriculum. I know because I went there for my own training. Gallaudet includes deaf culture in their studies. So their graduating therapists disperse and know how to work with deaf individuals because they have that training. When they provide therapy, they know the specific needs of the deaf community. In Milwaukee, we don't have anybody that does that or knows that. I have referred a couple of students to Rogers Memorial for service, but Rogers, they don't know what they're doing when it comes to deaf culture, deaf children, development. They struggle to find an interpreter because a lot of their programming is all day. Inpatient is all day. So these people are hospitalized for periods of time with no communication, if you can even imagine that. A lot of providers don't have, or some interpreters don't have the mental health specific certificate. So then these kids end up getting into trouble again, and they're in and they're out, and they're in and they're out. This isn't just specific to adults. The kids are rehospitalized multiple times before they get the help they need, and it's tragic. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your service. Where do you teach at? Or where you work at?
I'm not a teacher. I'm a social worker. But I work in Milwaukee. I'm not a teacher at Milwaukee Sign Language School.
And could you give any examples that you knew about of specific cases, rather, where the students were in isolation without communication for long periods of time? Do you remember any specific situations that you can tell us about?
There are several children who are very angry. They're depressed. Let me give you an example. I think a year ago I had one student in particular who was diagnosed schizophrenic. But they weren't diagnosed until much later in life. They were already a middle schooler when that diagnosis was made. So we tried to find a therapist to meet her needs. So we found someone, but the therapist only knew some sign, and this therapist was a man working with a young lady. So that didn't work right there. So therapy had to be suspended. In addition, this family was already traveling a great distance to bring their daughter to someone who would be willing to work with her, so it wasn't good on many levels. So we referred her to Rogers, but that was bad as well. So she had 2 negative experiences seeking the help that she needs. So the system really failed her. It was heartbreaking. The services that we have just didn't fit her needs.
And last question, how did you get your hours?
Well, I'm not a clinical social worker. I'm a school social worker, and that's different. So the licensure that Eve was talking about didn't apply to me. It's separate because I'm not clinical. If you are clinical, you need the supervision. I earned hours through an internship while I was still in school.
School social workers are not, they have a different requirement for licensure, so it's different altogether. But that's a good question.
That was a great question, and I just want to point out that that Megan is probably one of the most qualified people we have in the state of Wisconsin to work with deaf and hard of hearing children, and yet she could not work outside the school situation. She doesn't have a license for that. So it's between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, and one last thing I'll say is that we also should recognize we have Cookie here as well, and Katie, who just joined us as well, and I serve with them and some others on the licensure task force when we're working around these issues a lot. So I'd encourage everyone, if you don't know, these are two wonderful individuals and great people, but also might be good to share your information with as we're moving forward to develop legislation around hopefully fixing some licensure issues in Wisconsin. And maybe you could also share experiences with me, but also these two, because they have a lot of, they have a big say on the task force as well.
Actually, I would like to comment. My name is Cookie. Yes, really. My name is Cookie. You had just mentioned the concerns with licensure. I'm from Illinois, I guess I should start with that, and I attended Gallaudet also. I went through their master's program in social worker because I wanted to work with deaf and hard of hearing children in a school environment. I graduated, moved back to Wisconsin, and I've been here for some time, and I couldn't move forward. I couldn't work here as a school counselor because, they told me I needed to repeat my supervision hours, and I'm thinking, where am I going to be able to do that? So I've been here for some time and haven't been able to apply my skill set. So I feel like I have something to offer. I bring the deaf culture with me. I'm deaf myself, but I can't even begin to work. It's a huge, huge problem. So I do hope to see that changed going forward. There are a lot of graduates from Gallaudet who are deaf, who are looking for work and want to work with children and adults. And then you arrive in Wisconsin and you are told, so sorry, you'll have to start over. Oh, on a different note altogether, I think some of you saw the video of me just a little while ago. It gets me very emotional when I think about this, but I have two deaf daughters. They go to the Montessori school in Milwaukee. Both of my girls, my eldest doesn't qualify for an IEP. My younger one does and has an IEP. We have asked for an ASL interpreter for our youngest daughter with her IEP team, and we were denied twice. The first time the team said to us, well, your request for having an interpreter for 20 minutes a day, that doesn't make it worth it for us to pursue finding someone. It's not a good use of our resources. And then the second time, we got approval for her because she's going to school all day long. Like, hello, you need to have your environment accessible to her if she's going to be with you 5 days. And we were denied initially again. And then because she's been doing well, that's what they're telling us, she's doing well in school, she doesn't need an ASL interpreter. They're making this decision for us on our behalf, and let me tell you what, it is frustrating for us. I have gone to her class, I volunteer my time to teach ASL to her peers so that she can talk with her little friends, because that's so important for that social emotional piece. If she wants to hang out or play with her little friends, she needs to be able to have some self-esteem around this. So I go in and I teach ASL to her class on Fridays. But right after my lesson is done, the teacher has story time. The teacher doesn't sign the stories. So I see my daughter sitting with her friends, playing with her shoes or her socks or looking all over the room because she doesn't have access to the story in the classroom. It's heartbreaking. I try to tell her what's going on in the story, and when I'm there and I can stay, she's really into it. She wants to know, but I grieve that for her. She wants to read these stories, and just like all children like story time, and she can't. And it happens every day. It is heartbreaking that she cannot access her learning environment, and something needs to be changed because these people are making these decisions for us. The school is Fenwood, I think. Fernwood. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where Sunday license kids go. Fair child.
I know they're always late together.
Hi, I'm Gina. I'm a student at UWM. I'm an interpreter training program student first year, also from Illinois, and right now I don't know about other student interpreters or certified, but I am worried as heck about certification and licensure. Right now, So right now we're kind of in limbo. If Wisconsin wants to adapt the BEI test that Illinois and Texas have, or if they want to stay with the NIC test, all of that stuff, it's all in limbo right now. And I mean, a lot of us are just saying, keep hearing it depends, it depends, it depends, we don't know yet. And I mean, I graduate next year. That's scary. I would just like to be informed.
Yeah, and I assume most people in this room know about this situation, and it's, I think, got a lot of the interpreter community especially really upset, as is a very upsetting situation. But just show of hands, is anyone not familiar with the situation going on? A couple folks? Okay, so quickly to explain, and maybe you can help out if I'm missing anything, any of the interpreters in the room, but there was, first of all, there's already a significant scarcity in Wisconsin for interpreters, and I mean, it's, we've heard testimony that kind of alludes to that fact already, but now there was kind of an upset at the national level, and there were some kind of extraordinary factors that have interrupted the previous process that this went through nationally. So therefore, states are looking to make up the difference and hopefully fix the situation sooner or later, because in the meantime, while there is not an opportunity to get licensed, that scarcity is going to grow, and also someone who currently is able to practice, it's tomorrow, it's the end of the month, I guess, you still have your expertise, you still have your abilities, but now you can't practice anymore because time changed, and people are under that, situation as well. So it's kind of, very scary time, I think, for a lot of people who are putting a lot of money and resources into getting this employment, or people who are currently employed but are going to be left out in the cold. And that's actually how I got to know Cookie. I don't have kids yet. Like Chris, I didn't get to know her through Fernwood, but I got to know her through working with her, and Katie, who was with us before, and some of the other folks here today. But it's in limbo because there's not a solution right now is the answer, as I understand it, and I'm working on it. And part of it is kind of it's not a great time either, because we're out of session. No legislation is happening right now because it's campaign season, and the way Wisconsin works is we're only a 3/4 legislator. So part of the time this part of the time of the year we're campaigning and not legislating. So it's good because it gives us a little bit of time to make sure we get it right, make sure we can work with the departments and get the language figured out, but it's bad because it can't be as expedient as it would be if we were, say, in this, in the upcoming March, or, next year, January or whatever. Yeah, if it was a year from now, it'd be a different situation, but that's just the situation we're in right now in Wisconsin. So I would highly encourage you to get in touch with the task force to share your experiences and to share any potential ideas you have for solutions. And Pam, who's with us tonight, is kind of running. Does everyone know Pam? Did she? I wasn't in for the whole presentation. Did she get introduced? Correct. Yeah, so everyone's familiar with her, more or less? Okay. So I would encourage everyone who this is a concern with to also go through her, because she is directly leading those meetings, and she's kind of heading up the forces on it, but it's a very complicated, tough issue. It's complicated further still because DSPS, well, and we have the other situation where it's DPI versus DSPS, right? So that further complicates the situation. And on top of that, although DSPS has been relatively cooperative over the last couple months, and we were able to get them to a meeting for some technical questions. This is an area where it seems there's still a lot of learning that has to be done, and it just kind of caught everyone unawares. So, so we're looking for all the help we can get, and I would highly encourage you to follow up with Pam, to follow up with the task force, to share your story, and also if you have any ideas about ways to move forward, we need it. And the more letters we get, the more emails, the more you're contacting your state legislators. I mean, today technically is for the deaf and hard of hearing community, but interpreting community too, you guys can also lobby, and you can also let your legislators know, because that's a big issue. It's affecting you right now, and it is an existential threat to your financial security, to your job situation, to your vocational opportunities. So I would highly recommend lobbying your legislators too. And the more pressure you put on us and on the governor's office, the quicker we will be able to move on it once legislative cycle starts up again, which will, be coming pretty soon. So that's my take on it. I'm sorry I don't have a better solution for right now, but my job on the task force is to be the legislator who can kind of be a liaison between the two worlds, but.
It's also just really difficult because this is also limiting the amazing interpreters that we have or we could have. And in turn, that affects the deaf community, the people that we serve, and the reason that we're here. That's what's heartbreaking.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a situation where, again, we have a huge scarcity issue right now, and that's why a lot of these hospitals want to rely on these, as referenced earlier, want to rely on these, virtual systems that are a lot cheaper, and that's why they want to do it. They want these out-of-state people who, again, as you said, may or may not be even licensed here, and it's we already have a scarcity issue. This is just going to impact it, in a significant way. But hopefully we can mitigate it as quickly as possible. And again, we need more emails, we need more stories, and really you guys are the experts. You interpreters are the ones who know what's going on the ground floor with it. So we need your stories too. We need to hear from you. So I would just highly encourage that again. We have a little bit more time, but let's grab SE1, and then is there one over here too? Okay, one, and then whoever's next.
Hi, I'm Teresa, excuse the interpreter. I'm a student at UWM. I have a double major in pre-law and psychology. I am planning on becoming an attorney, working in civil rights. A lot of people who are talking about me becoming an attorney say that it might be impossible because I'm deaf, and they have a hard time imagining that happening in a courtroom, a court of law providing an interpreter for me to be able to practice law. But I'm sort of determined to do it anyway. So I have two situations I could tell you about this specifically. When I was in high school, I graduated from the Wisconsin School for the Deaf, but I did go for some classes at another school in the area across the street were all hearing students, and they refused to provide me an interpreter while I was over there taking those advanced classes. They said it was too expensive. The classes that I wanted to take, they said weren't necessary for my future, and those were classes I was interested in taking. Social psychology was one, law and government was another, and that absolutely will affect my future. But somebody else told me, no, it's not important for you. You don't need to take these classes. But I took them anyway. I did miss a lot of the information, though, because there was no interpreter. So I had to study a lot on my own and do some research online, ask my roommate to help fill in the blanks for me because there was no signed communication access in the classroom itself. What else was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. But I did it anyway, on my own, under my own effort. And I proved my school district wrong. Technically, I could sue you because you didn't provide me an interpreter. I could. But my dad, we didn't want to go through all of that, and not yet anyway. I want to learn more about the law. I still have proof that this happened to me, so I'm hanging on to this paperwork to see or wait for the right time, and maybe I'll do something with it later. This other time, I was in the ER. I want to say it was 2 years ago. I was having some issues with my gallbladder, And I think it was 9 o'clock at night, and they gave me this VRI that John was talking about. I had to lay on my side because of the issue, and the VRI was on my back side. I couldn't even see the computer. And my dad got to the hospital, and he drove 3 hours from home to get to me where I was hospitalized. And he said, "How are you even understanding what the doctor is saying, what your options are?" And I said, "Well, Dad, I don't. I have no idea what's going on. They just told me to lay on my side, that it will ease the pain or whatever." They were doing ultrasounds and other stuff on me. They brought in the VRI, because it's usually on an iPad on a stand, and then it died, like the battery died, so I had no access at all with the doctor. So the doctor misunderstood what I was trying to say about my pain. So it happened that, well, he didn't think that I actually had a problem with my gallbladder. He thought it was something else, but that led to 2 months of them researching other possible issues to see if it was in fact a gallbladder issue. So they ignored what I had to say, but it really was that I had to have my gallbladder removed. I just got like a couple of different referrals until we got back around to me having it removed on Thanksgiving Day, because it escalated. So that is crazy. An interpreter should be provided in person for situations like that. If you're laying on your side, you can't have a computer in your face and sign with 2 hands. You know, that's really weird and awkward, especially if it's on your back side. Yeah.